Hi, and welcome to 10-Minute Bible. This is number 4 in the series where I'm looking at the story of Jesus' life as Luke presents it, which I think is an incredible story. And I hope that as you've been following the videos, that I've been laying out some things which are surprising and very helpful to you and will help reveal why it is that the story of Jesus is an incredible story, not only for people of that time, but has continued to be for thousands of years, a very important thing for people everywhere to know and to embrace. And I think Luke presents Jesus in a way that we can place our trust in him. So again, my name is Michael Venema, and welcome. Thanks so much for joining in. So in this video, I'm looking at chapter 3 of the book of Luke. In some of the earlier videos, I read some of the Bible passages, but I think I'm going to just encourage you to read them on your own, read those passages on your own. You might just want to pause the video and you'll go to BibleGateway.com. I use a version of the Bible called The Message. It does a nice job of presenting the Bible in dynamic language, which I think is fitting for the way the original readers would have experienced it. So The Message, and take a look at the first 3 chapters of Luke's Gospel. It's just called Luke. So we're looking at John the Baptist, and some of what I say here will make a little more sense if you've seen the previous videos, but it can also stand on its own. So we're going to take a look here at John the Baptist, and he's the one whose work it is, whose task it is to prepare the way for Jesus going public. So we've already in the first couple chapters seen Jesus' birth and some of the stories about his childhood. And now it's time for Jesus, around 30 years old, 27, 28, I'm not sure what, but somewhere around there, scholars have figured out. And he is going public, and John the Baptist is preparing the way. Now, John the Baptist is not the first instance of the kind of person that he is. He's like a prophet from the pre-Jesus parts of the Bible, the Old Testament. And it was the work of prophets to present to God's people God's message for their day, and what to do in response to God's presence and God's actions. And this is what John the Baptist is doing. I mentioned at the end of the last video that John the Baptist has some very harsh words for his audience, and we're going to get to those. I think we'll dive into them in just one second. So yes, John the Baptist, he represents the Old Testament tradition of the prophets, and he in a way is kind of the last of the old order. That is the last of the prophets who are active before Jesus goes public. So he's part of a longer Jewish tradition, and this also is important to know. In my last video, I linked how already in Jesus' childhood, it emerges that Jesus is not kind of an independent player in the Jewish scene. He's blessed by the guardians, the devout people, the guardians of the Jewish life and Jewish faith. The devout Jewish people bless him. And so we can kind of see from the early stories of Jesus, and also from John the Baptist being part of a longer and older tradition, that Jesus has not come to bring a new faith. Sometimes I put it this way: Jesus is really taking Judaism, the Jewish faith, and moving it forward. So you might want to say Judaism version 2.0 or something like that. So that's what Jesus is up to. Sometimes people talk about 3 great faiths, the Muslim, the Jewish, and the Christian faith, but it's really not like that. The Jewish faith and the Christian faith are totally bound up together, and this is presented a number of times in the New Testament, and maybe we can get into that sometime. Anyway, so John the Baptist starts starts working. And where is he working? He's working at the Jordan River. Now, this is important because the Jordan River is a river of beginnings. In the Jewish history and the Jewish story, when the Jewish people, when God brought them to the promised land, they could see it at first, but between them and the promised land was a body of water, the Jordan River. They cross it, and their new life in their new home begins. So the Jordan River is a place of beginnings. John the Baptist, that's what he's making a kind of a new beginning. You know, there's a new work of God emerging. John the Baptist is announcing to the people. So the place where John is active is important. Also, you might notice that there are crowds of people around him. So the people who are expectantly waiting for God to help them out of their terrible mess, which I've described in earlier videos, those people are out there looking for something from God, and they sense in John, well, maybe John is going to lead the way, to reveal to us what that is. So they're hungry for something, and they go out to see him. So crowds of people, a large number, and I think that in some of the other accounts of John the Baptist, some other interesting things emerge, and maybe I'll just leave them for now because we need to move on. So John the Baptist's message. So it is quite striking, and it is quite forceful, and it's disturbing, because when you read it at the beginning of chapter 3, John explodes in the presence of the crowds and says, "You brood of snakes, what do you think you're doing here?" And so what John is doing, he's baptizing people. There's a background to that too. John is not making up that ritual. But there have been water cleansings and so forth in the different parts of the Jewish community for some time, and John the Baptist is using that. And anyway, he's got some tough words. You know, he's doing some name calling. He's not. You know, he hasn't read the book, you know, How to Make Friends and Influence People. He's laying it on the line in the way that he believes God is telling him to present it. And he calls some of the people in his audience snakes. Now, I think from the other accounts of John the Baptist, you pick up that the specific people he's thinking about is the leadership of the Jewish people. So again, this goes back to some of the things I mentioned in the last video and in this one too, that Jesus and John the Baptist too, the precursor to Jesus, they get the attention of the devout people. They are in a sense blessed by those people. And so John the Baptist has harsh words for the Jewish leadership. And there's reasons for that, but I want to move on. There are John the Baptist's real message is prepare for God. Well, how do you prepare for God? Well, you prepare for God. Do you clean up your garden, you weed it, or do you vacuum the house? What do you do? No, John said you got to clean up your life, and this is what he means by the word repent. It means change, and so definitely he wants those leaders to take stock of their poor leadership and to do something different. And John the Baptist and Jesus too. Jesus will carry this message forward. Jesus also will have harsh words for the leadership, and we'll talk about that as time goes on. And we'll see why it is that John the Baptist and Jesus both had a very negative assessment of the leadership of the Jewish people. But there are three changes that John the Baptist calls for. So the crowd asked him, "What are we supposed to do?" And John the Baptist says, in essence, take care of your neighbors. Be generous. If you've got two coats and you see someone in poverty, give one of your coats to a person who needs it. The same with your food. Tax collectors who were considered crooks and traitors, and maybe I'll talk about that later on. They were considered crooks and even extortionists. You know, what should we do? And John the Baptist says, you guys have to change as well. I'm sure they were all guys, all men. No more extortion. Only collect what's required by the law. Don't take more than you're required, and keep the extra percentage for yourself. This is how some of them became quite wealthy. And soldiers, some of the Roman soldiers were also in the crowds. This is very interesting, not just Jewish people, but soldiers are listening. What should we do? And the soldiers were known to use their power to their own advantage. And so John the Baptist says, no more blackmail, no more your shakedowns. Be content with the pay you get from the government. And so people are struck by the strength, the straightforwardness, and the truth of what John is presenting. And so they're beginning to wonder, well, is this the person, the Messiah, the new leader who God is presenting? And John the Baptist says, no, he says, I am baptizing you with water, kind of a symbolic thing. But Jesus, or the one who comes after me, is going to be baptized with God's Spirit. And that's really going to bring changes. So clean up your lives. That is the way you have to prepare for the new work, the new person that God is going to present to you. So, all right. So let's give Jesus a few minutes, and then we're going to wrap up for today. So Jesus shows up, and John the Baptist also baptizes Jesus. Now, let me see if it's in John the Baptist's account that Jesus objects to John baptizing him, that John the Baptist objects to him baptizing Jesus, and then Jesus says, no, you got to do it. No, it's not in this one. But anyway, so this is very interesting, because so John the Baptist baptizes Jesus. Jesus goes under the water. John the Baptist brings him out of the water, and then a number of things happen. So people hear a voice. This is my son. You are my son, and he's my chosen one, marked by my love and the pride of my life. In this version of the Bible, this is God's voice talking about Jesus, and also God's Spirit comes on Jesus, and in this version, like a dove descending on Jesus. So John the Baptist has just said to the people, the one who's coming after me is going to baptize you not with water, but with God's Spirit of power, to make your life change. And now God's Spirit has come on Jesus. So you get the sense that, God's Spirit has come on Jesus, and that through Jesus, God's Spirit is going to be released among the people. So this is very cool. Also, what the people hear God saying, this is my son, chosen and marked by my love, and so on. So the Son of God, Jesus is the Son of God in some ways that are new. So in earlier parts of the Bible, sometimes the Jewish people are called the Son of God collectively. Sometimes one of the leaders is called God's Son, because they are embodying God's will, and they are chosen to lead the people. But of course, Jesus is God's Son in a much more visceral, and even now a much more, we could say, physical sense, in that his birth is a miracle of the Spirit of God, and so Jesus is human in that he's birthed from a human being, but he's also God in the sense that his birth was not a result of any sexual encounter that Mary had, but it's through God's Spirit that Mary became pregnant. So Jesus, the Son of God, now with God's Spirit, and I think that the Spirit's descending on Jesus is God's empowering Jesus to now go public and get on with his astounding mission. Just before he gets on with his work, Luke has one more thing he wants to do, and that is that it seems to us anyway that he wants to first bore us to tears, because he presents a huge list of the ancestors of Jesus. But this is a very interesting thing to look at, and we'll look at it at the beginning of the next video. So thanks so much for plugging into this 10-minute Bible, and hope you found it helpful. And don't forget to subscribe and like and all those good things. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.